So please give him a big hand.
Colgan. I'm research director at the Center for the Blue Economy at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, California. I've been asked to talk about marine policy today in the age of the blue economy and in the age of having to deal with climate change. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how policy making in general needs to change to reflect the evolving ideas of the blue economy and the realities of climate change. I'm not going to deal with any specific policies in any specific places, but more give a general overview of some themes of policy making that I think are critical. As we have evolved ocean economic policy over the years and ocean policy in general, this concept of the blue economy has become globally identified, globally accepted, though not necessarily globally defined in the same way by everyone. There is a general sense that the blue economy is a change from economic policies in the past, in that it seeks to create economic wealth from the oceans in a sustainable fashion. But that doesn't help us a lot either, because sustainability is another one of those terms that people disagree on, that has multiple equally plausible meanings. The most widespread discussions of sustainability generally use something like this Venn diagram on the right, where sustainability is the intersection among considerations of economic factors, environmental factors, and social factors. There are plenty of perspectives on how to measure these things and how to actually identify that score, but these are the basic ideas. And their implication for policy are essentially two that are very important. One is doing less, staying within limits, that there are limits to the system, particularly natural limits to the system, that we have to respect in order to utilize the resources of oceans and coasts. And resilience. Resilience is an idea that really has come up in the last 10 years as part of the concept of sustainability, mostly because of our attention to climate change and the realities of the issues that ocean and coastal policymakers face. So I want to talk a little bit about how each of these things can be manifest itself within policymaking. Sustainability is hard. If sustainability were easy, we'd be a lot further along. I mean, after all, who is in favor of unsustainable development? So to simply say we're going to do sustainability is something that pretty much everybody can agree to, but what does it mean? Why is it hard? Well, one of the biggest reasons it's hard is because sustainability is based around common goals. We all agree that we ought not to overdo it. We all agree that we ought to maximize economic values, but without, as the Rutland definition says, sacrificing the future for the present. But the common goals of sustainability run into the reality of bureaucracy, and bureaucracy is organized by highly organized, specialized structures and processes where experts from different fields each tackles their part of the common problem without necessarily seeing the problem as a whole. Defining goals and limits, it's very difficult, and particularly in areas like climate change, but where there is so much uncertainty, to define what we want to do in terms of, for example, the amount of additional development we want to put in sea level rise or flood-prone properties along the shore. We also have to deal with the fact that we go forward with policy, all of the data that we are using to try and set baselines is itself constantly changing, because we've now entered a period of climate change when the past is no longer a reliable guide to the future, but neither is it clear either what direction or pace or extent of change is going to occur. For all of these reasons, measurement of values and processes of oceans and coasts is particularly critical, but this is an area where we have spent very little of our resources to do this because we've traditionally organized ourselves around the specific measurement problems of things like GDP and measuring the specific policy-related outcome in a specific time in a specific place. But we do not have the whole picture available to us that we say we want to be able to act on. Most of our bureaucracies are silos. They separate the world by expertise and by mission. We organize by specialization, but we deal with problems that require integration. And so in, for example, parts of the world, the blue economy is a problem of the foreign ministry, which may have absolutely nothing to do with environmental or economic development or planning bureaucracies that are at the heart of shaping that country's blue economy. And every country is prone to this problem because of the nature of bureaucracy. We have to really seriously think about how to break apart the silos so that the common characteristics of the blue economy are themselves the goals, rather than simply slicing up the problems according to the lawyer's definition, the economist's definition, the biologist's definition, etc. We're used to managing within limits to a certain extent in the ocean economy. Korea, a major shipbuilding power, lives with the fact that it must have large cycles up and then large cycles down, because it is serving a global economy that is prone to irregular disruptions we call the business cycle. So in this graph on the left, which is start of ships in Korea, you can easily see the big run-up in 2006 to 2007, followed by the collapse in 2008 and 2009. You can see the drop-off in 2020 because of the pandemic and the beginnings of recovery in 2021. I expect 2022 will be better. This is in million metric tons, million tons of gross weight, rather. So Korea already deals with the limits of business cycles and must learn to deal with them in all of its industries. Natural limits are a different problem. The story of natural limits is, of course, extremely well understood in the fisheries world, in the captured fisheries. And this graph is commonly seen all over the world. You see the run-up from 1960 to 1990 in the amount of wildcats globally as fishing fleets expanded, new technologies were employed, and then it began to hit serious sustainability limits, overfishing, significant overfishing, significant problems with bycatch, and this graph hides the growing problem of illegal and underreported fishing. So what we see in this steady graph in the red line is probably way too optimistic. It's probably, if we could actually measure it correctly in terms of total catch, It's actually probably declining. Aquaculture is the big substitute for wild fish. There's been huge investments around the world, in Asia, in North America, in Europe. We are still discovering how much aquaculture we can do within natural limits. We're still developing technologies to expand those limits. In parts of the world, including much of the United States, there are social limits to aquaculture because of the competition for space in the ocean. So aquaculture is starting to just peel off a little bit here. And when it reaches its limits is uncertain, and that's, of course, exactly the problem. Some of our limits are imposed upon ourselves. We've destroyed something between 70 and 80% of the global wetlands over the past century. And that has meant the loss of large amounts of value in flood resilience, carbon storage, which we really could use these days, and fisheries and other species habitat. Fortunately, there's a global move to restore wetlands, to expand the limits that we have created by simply destroying the resource. So part of living within limits is being able to up the limit through careful investment in the ecosystems that are critical to us. Now, climate change is something that lies behind all this. Climate change in general, incidentally, is something that rarely gets talked about in the blue economy discussion. Yet, as you can see from this map, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, in some version or another, this is change in ocean temperatures, 1900 to the present. The whole ocean has gone up by between 1.5 and 2.5 degrees, with some of the warmest waters occurring around Korea. So this is a problem that has, in a sense, snuck up on us, and we tend to think about climate change this way as kind of straight line change. So we have the run-up in emissions from 1990 to 2020, and then we have some forecasts of emissions and temperature change with some uncertainty reflected in the size of the range. This kind of linear thinking is comforting to us because so much of the way we understand the world is in linear terms. We use linear models, we use linear mathematics, and we're comfortable with linear thinking and linear conceptions that says if you intervene here, changes will occur on this trajectory. The reality is that climate change is going to be manifested primarily for the next 20 to 30 years in extreme events. It is extreme events, hurricanes. So the bottom right picture is a hurricane, a typhoon, I should say, as appropriate to the Pacific, Typhoon Mitag in South Korea. The left picture is Hurricane Ian in South Florida in August of this year. So this is just a couple of months old. And I would point out that this picture is of a neighborhood almost 100 kilometers away from the shore, way, way outside people's expectations of storm-related flooding. Hurricanes and typhoons are merely the most common example of this extreme event. Consider what's happening right now in the North Pacific, where the Alaskan snow crab has literally disappeared. 3 years ago, there were something like 9 million snow crabs. In the last survey at the end of last year, there were less than 1 million. So somewhere 8 million snow crabs disappeared. And people don't know what happened to it. Climate change had something to do with it, but it might have been a contributing rather than a principal factor. The result of that is that the snow crab season has collapsed, is not open this year at all, and all those fishing vessels who make their living from the snow crab have all of a sudden been laid up because there is literally no fishery to go to. And these extreme events of heat waves, species collapses, storms, precipitation amounts that intensify, that's what climate change is going to force us to deal with. And unfortunately, we're generally not well prepared to handle a lot of emergencies because we tend to think things going along in a linear fashion. I said that measurement was a key factor to this. If we don't understand the system as a whole, there's no way we can understand how the ecological, social, and environmental factors integrate with one another. A global movement has been underway for some time now, in which Korea has been a leader to capture the value and importance of ocean-related resources. First, in the traditional accounting of the national income account, the red box there, the output of goods and services. But increasingly, we're looking at the capital stock, the physical capital stock of buildings and ships and so on, the financial capital stock, and the human capital stock, as well as the natural capital stocks, which are environmental assets. And we're trying to measure flows to and from the environment. We're trying to figure out how economic output relates to economic welfare, which is not the same thing, and what kinds of governance structures allow us to optimize the interrelationships among all of these. I mention this not because there's a quick and easy answer here, but because there is a global movement in the ocean policy area to provide countries with the tools and the information they need to take the whole perspective, not the sliced up perspective. So the blue economy is not going to create itself. We need to break up or at least connect across the silos, either with structures, committees, processes, task forces. All of these are the normal ways in which we try and connect. We also need to do it with people who are themselves trained to be capable of operating across the silos and the expertise. We need to recognize and plan for limits that are temporary, like the business cycle, natural, such as in fisheries, and the extreme events, the limits of extreme events created and forced on us by climate change. We have an opportunity to restore some of the limits we've imposed on ourselves. And we also, through all of these actions, have the opportunity to build the ocean accounts that are critical to the process. So those are just some thoughts about marine policy in the era of the blue economy. I appreciate the time you've given me to talk about these things. You can connect with me at the Center for the Blue Economy, and happy to discuss more at your convenience. Thanks and good day.
예, 고맙습니다.